I'm so happy to have you here today. I am popping on to show you a full tutorial on how I made this cardigan that I'm wearing. So be sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already, because you're going to want to know each part as you follow along to make it. It's easy peasy. It's made with the granny squares, which I have a free tutorial for you. It's finished off with ribbing. The sleeves are attached independently, and that's it. I'm going to be breaking down all of the design elements for you, giving you the yarn you'll need, the colors I chose as inspiration for you, the hook size, and some information on sizing and a size chart available to you. I would say that I probably am like a size medium in this. I'll give you some different tips on how to make it larger, smaller, whatever you need. So be sure to grab all of the things, and whether you're crocheting along with an existing project and just watching this for later, or if you want to go ahead and grab that stashed yarn that you have, let's get into it. Let's get started with the materials you're going to need to make this cardigan. You'll need approximately 9 balls of yarn. For me, I made the size basically medium large, and I used approximately 523 grams of yarn. This equals about 9 50-gram balls. If you're going to make a size small or larger than a size large, you will just need to adjust your yarn as necessary. For hook sizes, you'll need a 6mm as well as a 4.5mm crochet hook, a measuring tape, scissors, and a tapestry needle. The yarn I'm using is called Zafira from Hobby. It's actually sadly discontinued, but I would say that a nice substitute for this yarn is Feeling Good yarn from Wool and the Gang, or potentially the Fluffy Day yarn from Hobby. It is a light worsted yarn. This cardigan is perfect for any yarn that you have in your stash, but it is light worsted. So just keep that in mind when making your yarn selection. This cardigan is made up using granny squares. The granny squares are made individually, and for the size that I'm showing you today, you're going to need to create 46 granny squares. I'm putting a little chart on here so you can see, if you're making a size other than what I'm demonstrating today, how many total squares you will need. You may have seen the separate tutorial I have for flower motif granny squares on my channel, but I'm also going to include it here for you in this video so that you don't need to skip around. This video is going to include 3 parts for you. It's going to show you how to make the granny squares you'll need. Also, you will need to make 2 half granny squares. These are used for the underarm, as well as the last part of this video is going to show you the color chart and the schematics. The schematics are basically how the squares are going to be lined out and assembled, and be sure to check that out while you're crocheting, because it makes a lot of sense breaking it down in visuals for you, as well as I'm giving you the colors. This granny square motif is going to be worked over 5 rounds, and it's made just like a traditional granny square, except on this inner circle we're going to be working a slightly different motif than we would on a regular humble granny square. So go ahead and grab your materials. The hook size I'm using is a 6mm crochet hook. You will need a pair of scissors, as well as whatever yarn you have on hand. I'm using a medium worsted weight yarn here. It is a cotton acrylic blend. To get started with my granny square, I am just going to find the end of the yarn and bring it over my fingers to create a slip knot. Pull the yarn through to create this knot, and using your crochet hook, go ahead and attach the yarn to the hook. Pull the short end of the tail to secure it. Get set up to start working, and for this you could either create a magic circle, or what I like to do is chain 3 simple chains. So we're going to close that series of chain 3 to create a little hole here. This hole is where we're going to work our stitches. So just go ahead and pull through that yarn, and what we're doing here is closing those chains of 3 to create a little hole. This little hole is where we're going to start working our stitches. Start by chaining 1, and into that hole we're going to be working 8 single crochet stitches. Just bring the yarn through each time until you have 8 stitches worked into that center opening. At the point where you have 8 stitches, you're just going to work under the stitch head of that first chain 1, and you're going to just pull the yarn through like a slip stitch to close your first round. Okay, so here's the first round and we have 8 single crochet. To begin the second round, we're going to chain 3. In each stitch around, we're going to be working 3 double crochet. And you're going to be working into the same space as the chain for a double crochet. Be sure to pull up the yarn here so that your stitches don't get too tight. And then into that same space, work a second double crochet. The chain 3 does count as a stitch, so by the time we're finished with this, we're going to have 3 double crochet all into the same space. So into the next stitch, insert your hook and pull up a loop as you would for a double crochet. Repeat this 2 more times so that you have 3 double crochet worked into the same space. Here you can see that we have worked into 2 stitches, so we have a total of 6 double crochet into those 2 stitches. We're going to just continue following this same motif around, working 3 double crochet into each of the single crochet stitches from round 1. By the time you're done with this round, you should have 24 double crochet stitches total. To count your stitches, you can either count your clusters of 3 or you can count the individual double crochet stitches around. To close the round, you're just going to work under the stitch head of the first chain, and you're going to put your hook in, grab the yarn, and pull through to create a slip stitch. This is just going to close the round so that you have a circle. You can see on the original square that we've worked the 2 rounds to form this center circle. Next, we're going to be working these spokes that create the flower motif. Over the next round, we're going to be working a series of double crochet together, working across 3 stitches at a time. Chain 4, yarn over, and into the next stitch from the chain, you're going to insert your hook, pull through the yarn, and pull through for 1 portion of a double crochet. Instead of finishing the double crochet, leave that remaining loop on the hook. Do this once more, working half of the double crochet, and as you can see, we're going to have 3 stitches here. At this point, we're going to double crochet them together, so just pull that yarn through to complete your little spoke. Chain 2. You're not going to skip any stitches here, but you are going to work across 3 stitch heads, double crocheting together. So don't work into this first stitch because that's where the last stitch is coming out of, but into the next one. Into the next unworked stitch head, we're going to be working a double crochet. But instead of finishing the double crochet as usual, we are going to leave that yarn on the hook. So leave the last yarn on the hook. You'll have 2 loops here. Yarn over, insert into the next stitch, and work in the same way, completing only half of that double crochet. You now have 3 loops on the hook and 2 stitches have worked. You're going to do this once more so that you have a 3rd double crochet onto your hook. Pull through all of the double crochet loops. We've pulled through 3 loops here. You now have 2 loops on the hook, and you're going to pull through those last 2. It's a simple step, and it creates this kind of stitched together look that makes the flower identifiable in the center of the granny square. So we've now done that twice. On the original square, you can see that's where these holes are kind of created to give it a petaled look. I'll show you again so you can work another petal with me. So to work this again, we're going to go across the next 3 stitches. Be sure you don't work into that already worked stitch or your stitch count will be off, but it's the next 3. Start by chaining 2. You're going to chain 2 between each petal. Begin working your first of the 3 double crochets together. Pull up enough yarn so that your stitches aren't too tight. Pull through one portion of the double crochet, leaving that remaining loop on the hook. Do this once more. You now have 2 double crochet on the hook still, and you're going to do your 3rd double crochet in the same way. You now have 3 double crochet with the loop still remaining on the hook. Pull through those 3 loops. You now have 2 loops, 1 from the previous and 1 to complete. After you complete those, you can see that another petal has been created. You just chain 2 to get to your next set of petals. Working across, you are going to have 8 petals. You can see the flower is starting to take shape here. At the point where you've come to your last petal, I'm going to show you I have 2 double crochet here, and I need to work my 3rd into that very last stitch. It could look like it's getting taken over by the turning chain, but really you need to work into it and just make sure that you have 8 petals when you're finished. So here's my 8th petal. I'm closing up the 3 double crochets together. I'm also going to finish with that chain 2. And into the first turning chain where I had those 4 stitches, I'm just going to go into it and close with a slip stitch. This closes my circle. Now you'll see that the circle shape here is curled. So what I'm going to do is just tug on the yarn a little bit to kind of loosen up my stitches and help it lay flat. It's okay if it curls just a little bit. It does give it that texture in the finished granny square, as you can see here. The next 2 rounds are just going to be a series of simple double crochet clusters, finishing off the granny square and taking it from round to square shaped. To begin the next round, we're going to be working into the holes between the petals we just created. This is going to be the 4th round. So to begin, we're going to chain 3. Turn your work before working this next round. Work into the next opening, 2 double crochet. The chain 3 does count as a stitch here. You're going to chain 2 and into the same space work 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3. So we have 3 double crochet, a chain 2, and 3 more double crochet. Into this next space, we're going to work 3 double crochet. So I'm not chaining here. I'm just going directly into the space and I'm working 1, 2, 3 double crochet. So I have a corner space, and then this next cluster is going to be the middle of the granny square. Into the next opening, I'm going to create another corner. So 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3. Followed by a chain 2. You're going to chain 2 always into the corner space. And then 3 more double crochet into that same opening. This creates the corner. You're going to have 4 corners, as well as you're going to have 4 double crochet clusters in between them on this round. So let's look at what we have. We have our first corner created, our middle, and then another corner created. You can see that this is working 2 corners of this granny square. Into this next opening, we're working 3 double crochet. And then into the next opening, we're creating our 3rd corner. So start with 3 double crochet. Chain 2, always at the corner space, and another series of 3 double crochet into that same space to create the corner. This is going to be our 3rd corner of the square. You can see it starting to come together here. When you get to the point of making your last double crochet cluster, make sure you're working into the correct space and not confusing that turning chain with the space you should be working into. So you're going to be working into the chain 2 space, not the turning chain space, for your final 3 double crochet. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm just going to close this round into the top of the stitch head of that first turning chain that I had. So now your square is closed and you'll turn it over to begin working the next round of this motif. We're just going to be working another double crochet cluster series into the next round, and it's different because you'll have 2 sets of double crochet in between each corner rather than 1 set. So start with a chain 3. Into that first space right next to the chain, you're going to be working 2 double crochet. The chain 3 does count as a stitch just as before. And then you're going to find your next opening in between your double crochet clusters. There's not a chain space here, it's just the opening between the clusters. And you're going to be working another 3 double crochet. So I now have 2 double crochet clusters here. This is the side of the granny square. We're then going to be working into the corner. So into that corner space, just as before, you're going to be working 3 double crochet. You're going to make the chain 2. And you're going to work 3 more double crochet into that same space. You can see here I have 2 double crochet and then I have my first corner created. I'm going to follow this motif working all the way around. So I have a corner with 2 double crochet clusters before working my next corner. And to close the round just as before, insert your hook into that turning stitch head and just pull through. I'm going to cut the yarn at this point because I'm not going to make it any larger. And I'm just going to secure that yarn so that my granny square doesn't unravel before I sew in the ends. Here you have it. You might want to stretch it or block it a little bit, but it is a beautiful flower motif granny square made in solid color yarn. You will also be making 2 half granny squares. These are going to be basically the underarms of when you sew the cardigan together. So let me show you how to do those right now using the yarn you've selected and your larger crochet hook. You're going to do the granny square starting in the same way, so chain 3 to close that circle and just form a hole that we're going to work into. You're going to chain 3, work into that hole a double crochet. You're going to work a second double crochet And the chain 3 does count as a stitch here, so you now have 3 double crochet into this hole. And you're going to chain 2, yarn over, and you're going to work another series of 3 double crochet. We're basically going to be forming a little arched triangle here to make half of the square that's going to be the underarm fitting. So after you do your next series of 3 double crochet here, you can see you've started at the base, and we're just going to be building outwards round by round. So if you've done this type of square before, you can go ahead and work ahead and meet me at the next step. But if you haven't, let's continue on. You're going to chain 3, turn your work, and into the very first space here where you have the chain 3 and then the last double crochet, you're going to work your stitches here. So you're going to work another series of 3 double crochet, and I'm not going to chain in between them. I'm just going to work directly into the previous opening from the first round. So work your double crochet into that chain space, and you're going to be working 3 double crochets total into this same space. You're going to chain 2 and work another 3 double crochet into that same space. So you'll have 6 stitches total all into that same space. This is going to give you the little peak of that triangle. I'm not going to chain in between here, but I'm going to work into the last stitch space another series of 3 double crochet. This is going to give me the second round of this triangle granny square that is taking shape here. To continue on, we're going to work another round in the same way, chaining 3, turning the work, and into that first space between those 2 stitches, you're going to work your 2 double crochet, and the chain 3 does count as a stitch, so you have 3 double crochet total. Into the next stitch space, I'm going to work 3 double crochet. So you're just adding a cluster of 3 double crochet per each round. Into that tip of the triangle, here's where you work 3 double crochet, and then you are going to chain 2 and work another 3 double crochet into that same opening. This is the one space where you are forming the tip of that triangle, so all the stitches go into the same opening. Just continue down this side as you did the previous side by working 3 double crochet clusters into each space between stitches. Into that last stitch space, you're going to work another 3 double crochet. So you can see this is round 3, and we already have developed a little triangle here, and we're going to work another round. For me, I am working 4 rounds of this, but depending on your tension, you might choose to work a 5th round. So I am beginning with 3 double crochet into this space here. I am working into the space between previous round clusters, another 3 double crochet. And on this round, I'm working an extra series of 3 double crochet because each round we're adding a cluster, therefore on the next round, we're adding another cluster. So 3 double crochet, and then into the tip of that triangle, I'm working 3 double crochet, chain 2, and then another 3 double crochet. So that's where you work your 6 double crochet stitches into the tip of that triangle. Go ahead and finish this round and then repeat for another second triangle. So you should have 2 little triangles here, each with 4 rounds. If you're making them like mine, you can test your size by putting them onto one of your existing granny squares just to see that it is half of that square. And go ahead and sew in the ends here so that maybe you don't have to do it later. Let's talk a little bit about how you're going to lay your granny squares out. Maybe this is something you can watch as you work on your granny square total. So what we're talking about here is the front and back schematics is how we arrange the squares. So you can see that for the size that we're making today, I'm doing 20 squares on the front, 26 squares on the back. Now, the highlighted portion is where you can adjust for sizing. For size extra small, you're going to make 6 fewer granny squares, so you're going to have 40 granny squares total. To lay them out, you're going to have 20 squares on the front and 20 squares on the back. Notice you do not have the half triangle granny squares underneath the arms. For size extra large and double extra large, you're going to add 5 squares at the back. This is 51 granny squares total. The squares are going to be added in a horizontal row along the back side. So you'll have 31 squares on the back and 20 squares on the front. For size 3XL through plus, you're going to add 5 squares at the back and an additional 10 squares at the front. So this is going to be 61 total squares. In the schematics, you can see they're laid out with the additional squares on the front. So you're going to have 30 squares and 31 squares on the back. Because this cardigan's made using geometrical squares, you can rearrange the squares in any way that works for you. If you want to add length to this, or if you want to, instead of putting your squares along the front or the back, you can add them along the side for width. It's totally made to measure and customizable for you. Now let's talk about the colors really quick. You can choose any colors that you want. For me, I chose 5 pastel colors and I made mine in solid color granny squares. You could also customize this and make your granny squares with different colors in them. It's completely up to you to choose and create and design your own look. So in this diagram that I have, I've shown you how I'm laying out my granny squares with the front and the back sides. You can go ahead and start arranging yours if you want to, but I am showing you completely how I do this in part 2 of this video, so be sure to watch that one next to show you how I'm joining. Now, as far as colors, I used kind of like a cream color, a pale yellow color, a really light beige color, a teal, and a lavender. I have this indicated for you best I can, so that way if you want to make yours to look just like mine, you can lay out your squares in the same arrangement. I'm also showing you on here that we're going to add ribbing along the front of the body, around the neck, and then around the bottom length of the cardigan. So don't worry, we're going to completely finish it out for you. And I have the 2 little half squares indicated under the arms. It really doesn't matter what color those are because they're going to get hidden anyways when you're wearing it. But this is just a breakdown for you. Way to go on making all of your granny squares. You are amazing. Your cardigan is going to look awesome. Please join me next time because in part 2 of this video, I'm going to be showing you how we are making the sleeves, doing the ribbed edge, and then assembling everything. Can't wait to see you there.